he's like, I don't know how I could do my management without a map. And so that kind of, then that's where that this whole mapping is managing kind of has evolved to that tagline. So and that's really too how, I always thought it was kind of a first principle thing, right? You can't protect what you don't measure. That's another line
There you
I
go.
I
Oh man,
borrowed from I
yeah,
borrowed from someone else, but
yeah.
it's a great it really does boil down to that. You can't protect what you don't measure. You can't restore what you don't measure.
Hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World podcast. Shout out to our parent company, Digital Stormwater. We're out there making an impact in stormwater one click at a time. We put more stormwater people in front of your stormwater products and services. How we get there is totally up to you. Some of the services that we offer are social media management, Google, LinkedIn, and Meta ads, SEO and content creation, website builds and updates, AI automations, consulting, and a lot more. So the question is who do you know that needs our help? If you're on YouTube, you can click on that QR code to learn more, or you can give us a call at 844-451-2534, or you can visit us at digitalstormwater.com and schedule a call with us today. I'd like to thank everybody that's been listening to this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. Let's get back to the episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World podcast. Those that know me well know that I love me some GIS, and I spent a lot of time with GIS and mapping over the last decade with software that I used to sell. And so I'm pretty excited today to get to talk to Mr. Ray Valley. Ray spent the first half of his career as an aquatic ecologist and fisheries biologist with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. He's passionate about lakes, aquatic plants, and technology, and he led the development of Biobasemaps.com, making aquatic measurements easy. Now, under independent investors, Ray heads a small team dedicated to maintaining and enhancing biobase for water resource conservation. Ray, thanks for joining me on the pod.
Oh, I'm happy to be here.
We got some things to talk about. You put some things in the show notes that I'm interested to hear about and hear about your opinions. But I guess we could kind of just start out with just that base, very blunt line that you put in the notes for us, which is mapping is managing.
Yeah.
You want to define that for me?
Sure. And it's not an original.
That's not yours. You stole
it,
that.
I I stole it with permission.
Okay. All right. I'll say that,
A
then borrowed. Well, then
Yeah, right,
I
borrowed.
should
Yep.
back up. Say borrowed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good colleague, Matt Rail, who is a in the industry, lake and pond management in the Midwest. That's kind of his view. When he started using Biobase and saw the how easy it was to use to create a map for doing private pond management and fisheries management in private ponds, and the ability, just the ease at creating a bathymetric map to get water volume, to get your average depth, just the basic measures of habitat of ponds and lakes, and he talking at a NALMS conference in the past, and he was saying, he's like, I don't know how I could do my management without a map. And so that kind of, then that's where that this whole mapping is managing kind of has evolved to that tagline. So and that's really too how, I always thought it was kind of a first principle thing, right? You can't protect what you don't measure. That's another line
There you
I
go.
I
Oh man,
borrowed from I borrowed from someone else, but
yeah.
it's a great it really does boil down to that. You can't protect what you don't measure. You can't restore what you don't measure. And then we just try to make creating a lake and pond map just really easy. There's enough complexities in the whole process, and we just identify the whole kind of soup to nuts process of creating a map and what can we do. There's some things that are going to remain kind of difficult, but what are those easy things that we can kind of automate through our cloud processing and just easy buttons, developing easy buttons, you know, on through the browser. Um,
Right.
so that's kind of the background.
So in my experience, I'm used to like mapping assets, right? Like, so
Mhm.
we're mapping, you know, whatever that asset might be from an infrastructure standpoint. Let's talk about from your world. I feel like it's different from like, so are you mapping, because you're mapping details within bodies of water themselves. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Because I was trying to do a little research on the website, kind of
Mhm.
wrap my mind around what makes you guys a little different than maybe what I'm used to. So you want to talk about that? Maybe, I guess, maybe a good example would that, with detention ponds and in terms of stormwater management and what you all do, would that be a good place to
Yeah,
start?
detention ponds are a perfect stormwater corollary, and and that's a perfect application for biobase. And it's ponds that are, I mean, we just look at the basics, the basic physics of it. We're talking about, and we can stay in the context of stormwater detention ponds, about half an acre and larger, and then a depth of maybe a foot and a half and deeper. That's kind of where that's kind of our world, our ecosystem, right, if you will. um, where our technology, just using consumer sonar and GPS, could work well. Um, and so if you look at, right, and every state manages their stormwater differently, but where I'm from in the upper Midwest, especially in Minnesota, we have a lot of developments that have a network. Their stormwater management is through a network of detention ponds, and that a lot of their watershed plans and how they manage, like, the conveyance of water and how they manage storm events is through this network of ponds. And my in my shallow understanding, I guess no pun intended there, but my shallow
Right, right.
understanding of stormwater, kind of stormwater construction of ponds, is that it needs to have a certain, in order for it to be effective, and it needs to have a certain dead storage. And I know for a fact there's probably most communities, like in the Twin Cities metropolitan area of Minnesota, that were, that these communities built in the 60s, 70s, have these old stormwater ponds. And I don't think the cities even have any idea of, like, how filled in these ponds have become, like,
Right.
right, how much storage
Yeah,
is in these
yeah, they're
ponds,
right, right,
right?
yeah. Yeah,
So
they've lot yeah,
um
they're have not been maintained.
right,
Right. Yeah.
right. So, and we just say, like, hey, and we made it really, really easy. Just go out and get that data, right? You're talking about quantifying those assets and in doing inventories. My understanding right now, though, a lot of the inventories are dots on a map. This is a pond. Well, tell me more
Exactly.
about that pond.
No, that's exactly right. That's kind of when I let into it. That's how I feel
Yeah,
about, like, from my side of that. I mean, now everybody's GIS teams, and I'm going to get beat up in the comments like, no,
probably. Oh, it's all right.
we perfectly, we map for the complete outline and everything, and all that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But what we're talking about today is what, when I was kind of reviewing your website, you
Mhm.
can actually show the level of sedimentation, like, right? Is that,
Yeah.
am I correct?
And, and we do the
Through the
sedimentation through,
mapping?
basically what we're able to do is get almost a near real-time map of the bathymetry. And the bathymetry it's taking the top of the bottom, right? The top set, like,
Right.
it's kind of pinging off that
Right.
sediment water
Yeah.
interface. And that's the map you're creating. If you have the luxury of having good as-built, uh, CAD models and drawings, of knowing what that pond volume is supposed to be, and then you go out and you do a bathymetric survey, through that, just the subtraction, then you can see, like, okay, this is how much change has happened, and this is how much sedimentation has happened from time A to time B. um, Ideally, when you are in a new development or you're creating a new pond, um, you have your as built and ideal world, right? This is the way it should look. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have what it actually looks like. And that would be, okay, the excavator gets done doing their thing, construction gets done, pond fills up, go do a survey, get a baseline. And then you have then you can look at, over time, whatever kind of schedule you want to get on. Every 5 years, maybe go out and do another survey, the same, going doing the same thing, um, and then just doing subtraction to see how much sedimentation then has happened over that time. So, and we have this nice easy cloud platform where the data are processed kind of in the same way every time. So, and you get a nice time series of the results. And so, and if you make, when we make it easy, then you can scale that up, right? Well, we have 60 ponds in our community. I You could probably get those all done in a summer. So
And then are you
that's
able to pull real time data like after the fact, like after storm events? Could you see like changes, I guess, in
the only
the
the
pond, or
well,
how
you'd
does it
have to go out and do a survey right
do it?
after the storm,
Do it
and then,
again. I see what
and
you're saying.
is
Yeah,
it going
yeah,
to tell you, are you going to be able to see a 1 inch difference in the sedimentation? Probably not,
right.
but 6 inches, yeah, yeah, you know. So it's yeah, I think it's one of those things, right? And 6 inch from what is compared to what we're doing now, 6 inches is pretty good because we basically have, okay, well, we think it was like this when it was first built, but we really don't know what it is today at all. So um, yeah, so that gets into kind of this whole kind of fit for purpose um,
Yeah, yeah, because that's another
conversation.
what's one of our other ideas that we wanted to talk about was
Yeah.
the fit for purpose. So like outside of, because I like mapping in general, I find it very intriguing. I
So am
think
I.
it leads us into, some other conversations into, just overall technology across multiple industries. But so
Yeah.
let's just go to the back to the basics then of
Hmm.
biobase and then
Hmm.
what you guys are accomplishing. It doesn't have to necessarily be about stormwater, but just
Hmm.
kind of give me some more examples of what you guys are doing and how it kind of differentiates, and some of the benefits on that, because you guys have a ton of information here on your website.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, really, it from the beginning, it kind of started out as my background is I spent the first part of my career in fisheries research, and I love lakes, I love fish and fishing and outdoors and conservation, and I was going to be a lifer, DNR biologist. Man, I love that stuff, and but I'm also a data guy. I love data. I love maps. I love GIS. And I just love putting all that stuff together. And but my world was, I really wanted to know what was going on and with lakes and fish and the fish communities and fisheries. And so I've always been a habitat guy. I really I'm fascinated by the complexity of the underwater world. These are these lakes, shallow littoral zones, what they're called in deep lakes in Minnesota lakes. Littoral zones are like submerged forests. They're these amazing, complex arrays of aquatic plants, and these fish, the fish interact with aquatic plants, kind of like birds interact with trees in a forest, right?
Oh, wow.
So I was just really fascinated by that, and we can't see that. It's just like this fascinating underwater world,
Yeah.
which is why, and then as an angler, and you talk with a lot of like diehard anglers, and how like they are so transfixed to their fish finder screens because they're
Right.
electronics, because
Yeah.
that's their picture, that's their window um to that mysterious underwater world. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about like the bottoms of the ocean, and so that really has always piqued my curiosity, and that's really driven me. And so um, the I've always wanted to study fish and fish habitat, and the tools that we've had to do that, we just haven't had those tools. They're underwater, the lakes and rivers. They're really kind of hard to measure the habitat in a quantitative way. And so, but I was a fisheries researcher. I was not a civil engineer. I'm not a civil engineer. I'm not a hydrographer. I'm not a geostatistician. I'm a fisheries habitat biologist, but I, I needed to like teach myself to be a hydrographer and teach myself geostatistics and kriging and variograms and all this crazy stuff just to get the data I needed to do the fisheries research. I just wanted the habitat data. Just give me the habitat data. But there was no easy way of getting sufficient habitat data. So that, and it's a long story about how that evolved into this business that forced me to, or not forced me, I kind of felt, I mean, I felt that pull. There was that much of a pull to leave my job at DNR to see about this opportunity to grow this, to build this bio-based business. And there was a lot of kind of fortuitous circumstances that led to that. But at the core, it's like I was driven by this notion that creating the map is the means to an end. It's not the end. The map was never the end for me. It was always just the means to the end. And that's with a lot of our customers then, they kind of view it the same way, right? Like I want to do my fisheries monitoring, or I want to do my stormwater assessment. I want to do uh, I want to do actually they use their technology in sewage ponds, right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah, like all these like really interesting applications, but it's not. The map only just helps me do the job I'm getting paid to do, or whatever. So
yeah.
um, yeah,
Let's stop right there and
sure,
unpack that a little bit because I'm on the
yeah,
website I'm looking at because I know nothing about pond and lake management, right?
hmm
I'm a tech nerd, but
hmm
so if I'm looking at this pond and I'm seeing diffuser one, diffuser two, and I see the topography and I see the sedimentation and all that, so how does having the data allow me to manage that pond better?
right. I mean, it gets back to addressing critical unknowns. Um, a lot of times whether you're a lake or pond management consultant, or it's in the private sector, and you're managing a private landowner's pond, or you're a fisheries research biologist with the state DNR, or university researcher. There's some kind of like overarching like problem of the or interesting question that is perplexing about a system of interest or systems of interest. And and one of the things that I've found with in aquatic sciences, and um, is it's a lot of times those, or what you're seeing right now, is usually a result of something that's like the cumulative effects of things that happened long ago over large areas. I'm also fascinated by watersheds, right? And our lakes are sinks in the watershed. These stormwater ponds, and that's the thing that I find fascinating about stormwater, right? That the stormwater pond, right, is a very um, it's a very intentional part of the whole, kind of like almost like a big watershed engineering project, right? And so it's we're just one piece. We're just trying to address one piece of the larger complex picture. And the practitioners that are kind of charged with kind of figuring out, putting together the big, all the big puzzle, they have a big enough job to try to put all these little pieces together. And we're providing a little piece, or maybe for providing a couple pieces. But we don't want them spending too much time trying to figure out how this one little piece fits. We're just like, here, this is one less thing you have to worry about. We'll get you this critical information about the water volume, about the physical components, the aquatic plant growth. That's another thing we measure is the vegetation growth, bottom hardness, those kinds of things. And then you can worry about, or you can go find other pieces of the puzzle. So,
Gotcha. So I'd
yeah.
interrupted you and you were telling me the story. So you were in this one life, and then you started looking at all this and getting excited about this data, and
Yeah.
then you felt that pull to the next life, and then I kind of interrupted you to unpack just kind of like how it works, but where were we on that story? So obviously somewhere in there, biobase was formed.
Yeah.
Was biobase formed before? Was it always been biobase maps? I mean, I'm looking again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just tripping across your website. So where were we on that story?
Yeah.
What's next? Like, because it looks like I would assume that as with good any entrepreneur, like you started with one thing, and then somebody said, "Well, hey, can you do this?"
Right.
Yeah, I
Right.
think we could do that. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do that? And then now
Right.
you have it as a full SaaS opportunity for folks. So you kind of want to
Right.
explain all that.
All right. How that's all evolved. Yeah. Um, well, originally we developed so both biobasemaps.com and then genesismaps.com, and and this is kind of the entry into the consumer world. So genesismaps.com, and you can type that up and check that out, and then check out the social map. Ty, while we're talking, there's a social map up there, and you can pan around and look at. We developed this crowdsourcing platform for anglers,
Oh, cool.
and that really took off. So Biobase was formed in along around about the same time we were developing that consumer platform Genesis, and that went really successful. And the business. So Biobase was one of two products under this business called Contour Innovations in 2012, and in 2014 we were acquired by Navico, which at the time owned the four major marine electronic brands, or three electronic brands: Lowrance, Simrad, B&G, and then they also later acquired CMAP. CMAP is the mapping embedded maps that are in Lowrance chart plotters and a few other brand chart plotters for boating, fishing, sailing. Um, so
Cool.
we were acquired to build that mapping platform and the social map, and it was all a consumer based platform. Biobase was focused just on the conservation side of things, and B2B, business to business, business to government. Anyway, so for like 10 years, we were together with Navico. The Navico gets acquired by the Brunswick Corporation. The Brunswick Corporation is the big boat company that owns Lund, Crestliner, Sea Ray, Boston Whaler, and they own Mercury Marine and several other brands. And so we were acquired by them. It's such a big company, different priorities. One thing led to another. Then we're spun off. We kind of split. So Biobase and Genesis were all one platform, kind of one system. Biobase is just basically another kind of, or Genesis with another kind of Biobase subscription. But Brunswick wants to keep the Genesis platform and spin off Biobase, so we split the Siamese twins, and we're now have under individual or independent investors ownership, and we're back to being, and so now we're independent. Biobasemaps.com. Now we are right now we only process sonar files from Lowrance and Simrad depth sounders, but that we're working on, that's going to be changing. We are kind of an agnostic platform now, so we'll be
Okay.
moving
Nice.
towards the end. We don't have a product yet, but that is kind of a look into our future development, is being able to process multiple manufacturers.
Oh, look at
So
that. Got a teaser
yeah,
for everybody. Look, you heard it
yeah,
here first.
right, yep.
Um, that's cool. So, I
Yeah,
mean, to kind of key in on that, for those, I mean,
yeah,
because we do have listeners that sometimes are new to the stormwater industry, and they may be new to the, municipal work, or they may not have extensive knowledge of GIS and just how the
mhm,
data is acquired or in the equipment. So, do you want
mhm.
to kind of go over that process a little
Yeah,
bit, like, so because there's obviously both on the conservation side with bio-based maps, and even on the consumer side, with CMAP, there's hardware involved, which
Yep.
is where
Yep.
and how you obtain the data before it goes up into your, I would assume, into your account, and then you get to
Yep.
see it online. So,
Yep.
but if you want to
Yep.
kind of break down that a little bit,
Yeah.
better
Yeah. Sure.
than
It's
I do.
the basic kind of as a three-step process.
Right.
Where you have the Lowrance device, and that's got your sonar and GPS. It's kind of all inside that display, and you record, and you can and that's hooked up to a transducer. Transducer sends sonar signals, acoustic signals through the water. It bounces off structures, bottom, fish, comes back. You record that to an SD card. All of that raw information is recorded to that SD card. You can map passively. It's pretty much you get your fish finder hooked up correctly, and I mean I call it a fish finder because really at the end of the day
Yeah.
that's what they are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want people to it's just really easy, right? You you get your fish finder installed correctly. You hit power, you hit record, and it records all that information. You can go back and forth on the pond or around in circles or whatever, and all that raw information is being recorded to that SD card. Then you go to your browser, you go to biobasemaps.com, you have an account or you create an account. There's different subscription plans, different trials, free up to, and different based on the features and based on, how much you use it. Um, and You upload your sonar file. That goes to remote servers, cloud servers that are processing every single sonar signal. So that thing is the sonar unit is pinging at 20 data points per second. And in every one of those data points, there's 3,200 bytes of information. So there's a lot of data that our servers are processing that and then looking at has we have algorithms that look at where is the depth, where is the vegetation, what does the bottom hardness look like, and all of that, and then it creates a GIS map in your, and then you're alerted with an email. The map is done processing like 10 minutes after you upload. And and then we on the back end, we actually, if we don't have the water body in our database with a lot of these new stormwater ponds, we don't have the water body boundary in our database, but we have a really nice workflow where we digitize the zero boundary, and then your map is then all then contained in that water body boundary, and then that's all within one business day. We'll have that boundary digitized, map reprocessed, and then that's available to you to review. If there is any, we have quality control. We give you feedback on, as you're we've looked at like a million sonar logs, so we can tell you whether your transducer looks like it's slanted, or there's some electrical interference or some kind of problem with the file. We communicate that with you because we can see that too. We see all of that information, and we give you that feedback. And then if you need to do some other editing, reviewing for some maybe bad soundings that squirted through, whatever, you can delete those, reprocess. You have some verification tools, so it's not all black box. It's there is some ways you can review your outputs, and then you have a range of tools or a range of deliverables, if you will, that you can export, bring into a third-party GIS platform, whether that be Arc Pro or QGIS or whatever you're using. It exports shape files. It exports Google Earth, KML, KMZ. It exports CSV, is just raw, just the
Mhm.
raw data. So again, because that's my background, I was a data guy. I'm like, okay, if we're going to develop this, we have to have these kinds. These are high value data products that practitioners are really going to value. So let's deliver these as as an output.
So does this process, is this something that, like, if somebody is this normally handled by a third party company or people that are trained in this, or do you feel like this is something that, like, anybody can learn, pick up, and just go do? I mean, obviously from the consumer side, like as a fisherman, like, yeah, but as
Hmm.
far as like mapping detention ponds and stuff, or what do you see out there in your world, or is that being done by third party companies,
Yeah,
or is it something that like you know somebody that works at the city could just learn how to do and go do it themselves, or
actually both.
yeah,
Um, and so um, we've designed it so that a water resource technician or an intern could execute a survey and create a map. However, there's always going to need to be basic understanding of, you know, things like what is your outlet elevation, right? What kind of offsets do we need to account for? I mean, just some of the basic knowledge that would has to go kind of hand in hand, but that's not really like heavy technical knowledge. As long as they have some basic training on installation of the equipment, they know what they're kind of looking at, and or some oversight, right? So maybe some oversight from a maybe a more seasoned um, uh, a more seasoned staff, or what have you, to give them some of that oversight. But once that kind of that that oversight is given and those protocols are delivered, then really anybody can execute that survey. And that's actually the power of it, right? Because if, like I said, if you're following the rules, you can put an intern on that boat, and they will get the exact same output as a a hydrographer with 20 years of experience, right? Because
yeah. I mean, that's what
that's
we're talking about. That's the
right,
technology. That's where we're at,
right.
right?
That's
So
that's it.
so
But
that leads us. Oh, there's a but. Go ahead.
no. That well, no. Let's just see where you were going to go.
Oh no, I was just gonna jump into like, but where are we going, right? So when can I connect the transducer to my phone,
Yeah,
right?
right,
When do I get to like when do I get to dump the hardware and just connect that transducer
right.
to my phone and
So
go on, right?
I mean,
I don't know.
that is a
I don't know if that's
great
a good idea or
question,
not, but
and that is a great question. And that's another thing where our MO, if you will, has been that consumer technology has really developed leaps and bounds over the past 20 years. And these, and what we're doing with Biobase is that we're just leveraging the larger markets in the consumer marketplace for these technologies, right? So if there's consumer demand, right? If there's consumer demand for, I'm going to hook up a transducer through my phone, which there probably will be, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
And then but there's all kinds of R&D that is going into those kinds of questions, basically to be able to help people find and catch more fish. And all we're doing is tweaking just a little bit here and a little bit there to create a data product. And now, like with this live sonar, I don't know if you're much of an angler, but in any kind of circles of angling, live sonar is exploding. And live sonar is basically, you can see fish swimming around on your display. And so you're seeing creative uses by fisheries biologists already. In other
Right.
words, if they want to go get a fish sample and these fish are difficult to survey, they can see fish. They're on their screen, and they have fisheries biologists. A popular technique is electrofishing. Temporarily stuns the fish, and the fish come up
Okay.
to the surface. However, if you do, you'll find that a lot of fish are not very vulnerable to the electrodes and to that electric field, and there's a lot of things about the water chemistry and all that stuff that makes a fish, and the different sizes are more vulnerable than others, and different species, and just a huge range. But they're using a live sonar to be able to basically observe how are the fish responding to that field of electricity, and they can see fish swimming away, and or they'll wait till they can get close to a pod, and then they'll hit the
Oh
pedal,
gosh.
and the
Yeah,
electricity
yeah.
goes in the water, and then and they'll get their sample. So that's one of those things, right? Like in this industry, it's so niche that there probably wouldn't be the R&D and the capital to put up to develop that technology just for that use. But we're just trying to take that that value add, kind of just taking what's already been developed, tweaking it a little bit, and making it useful uh,
That makes sense. I
for
gotcha.
researchers.
So
Yeah.
what people want on the consumer side, then you guys just kind of turn it into, the data side of it, as well as
Yep.
kind of just apply it over onto a lot of the conservation efforts that you're seeing across these different other niche industries.
Yep.
Well, what did we miss, I guess? And then as we're kind of wrapping up, like what
Um.
most of our folks are stormwater folks. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to take one more, take another shot at just like how they would best benefit from, mapping uh, at this level of detail
Yeah.
to their benefit, or your thoughts on that. And
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to bring up was this concept of fit for purpose,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and that is and that's where it kind of means this term. It's also like I think I've heard a term like it's purpose built. Um, but it's this concept. I think and maybe that's another term that I borrowed from somebody. I don't know, but fit for purpose. It's basically, it says it's the right methods for the right job, and also really importantly in the right budget. And there's, like, we are using consumer sonar, consumer GPS. Like I said, the develop it's gotten much better in terms of its resolution, its accuracy. I mean, what you can create with it and what you can see. And also too, I didn't talk about like the side scan sonar and stuff like that. I mean, it's amazing. The detail that you can get with these consumer devices is pretty amazing. However, it's for certain, it's fit for certain purposes. For what I would argue is, purposes like water volume, dead storage, getting your basic bathymetric profiles, right? That is a perfect purpose for like this technology and what we do. Um, but it's maybe not fit for you know, doing, let's say, engineering inspections, uh, or maintaining a navigation channel for commercial navigation, right? Or surveying for, you're going to be building a bridge across a river, right? You're not going to use Biobase for those kinds of purposes. For those purposes, you need to get down and dirty and old school, like civil engineer, like really high grade survey grade stuff, and do a very thorough job. But for mapping your community stormwater ponds, this is perfect. You could knock out 50 ponds in a summer, get all your stormwater ponds mapped using this, and for a fraction of the cost that you would pay if you were to contract that out to like an engineering firm to use all, to throw at, to use all the survey grade stuff and do there and go through that conventional hydrographic workflow. You're talking probably millions. And that's like kind of that's the thing that we want to address now. It's like, to do that is not going to cost an arm and a leg
right,
to get really good data. So that
right.
that in the essence is what fit for purpose is. And I think it's a good conversation to start having. It's a good debate. Like, okay, is Biobase fit for this thing, or not? And let's work through that. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, I think it's important to just mention again to everybody to that this level of mapping is not, you're not just, oh gosh, we got to do this, we got to do that, and I'm just used to putting a point on the map. The level of data that Ray explained, that you just explained, right, that you're getting when you're surveying the pond is an extraordinary amount of data and the amount of time and the cost factor that you're acquiring that data. And rather than have it just in some spreadsheet that you're never going to look at, it then is able to be turned into a visual representation of that
Yeah.
data. And so that's where the rubber meets the road, because we can determine a lot of things when we can see data. So if
Right.
everybody can wrap their mind around that one, when you can see data,
Yep. Right.
you
Very
can you
visual.
can
Very
you can
visual.
make
Yeah.
you can make a lot of different decisions that you may not have been able to make um, without that information.
Right.
So
Right.
very cool,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
cool,
That's
very
that's
cool.
the thing at the 30,000 foot level. That's who we are. So no, appreciate the opportunity.
Well, yeah. I just I think this is really cool. Did we miss any? Did we miss anything, Ray? Anything else you'd like to share while we're here on the call? And
Right.
I'll let you
Um.
get back to your day. But man,
Yeah.
we'll put everything, folks, as per standard. We'll put biobase.com and all that'll be in
Biobasemaps.com. Yeah.
biobasemaps.com. All that'll be in the
Yeah.
show notes. All
Yeah.
that'll be in the show notes.
There's another
Biobasemaps.com.
biobase company. That's a medical company. Whatever. So
Oh,
they would
really?
go to a
Oh, yeah,
different,
yeah.
a totally different
Yeah, don't go there. Don't go there. You don't
yeah.
want anything to
Yeah.
do with that. And
Yeah.
then we'll also put all your social handles, if that's cool. Put that in the show
Yeah.
notes so
Appreciate
people
that.
can get hold
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah, we
Um,
do a lot of, and just to let your listeners know, we do a lot of, free training. It's software as a service. Ty, as you know, it is a
mm,
service. It is, we really kind of walk with you, and we have staff that got a lot of experience in this area, and we're really gonna help you get started. And really, once you get started, you're going to find it's like this is pretty easy to do, and then we'll continue to support you. So that's another thing that I think maybe because we're all, we're pretty humble too, but I think if you look at, our reviews and whatnot, or you talk to people that do use us, they really value our customer service, and that's something we really take seriously. Um, so yeah, that's who we are.
well, Ray, thank you for we put this together on a short time frame. This was
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Reached out, got you on the pod, so that was awesome. Man, I appreciate you coming on the pod today, and I guess if that's it, then we'll talk to you soon, sir.
All
Appreciate you.
right. Take care.